Good afternoon. My name is Emmanuel Nnadozie. I am really honored to be here this afternoon to serve as your moderator for this very important panel discussion this afternoon. And as you can see for yourself, we have a distinguished panel that will be sharing a lot of wisdom with us today on a variety of issues, but most of them relate to the issue of how do you promote growth, economic growth, how do you make sure that this growth is inclusive and creates jobs, and what kinds of experiences you can learn from successful stories. And because the two ministers from Sweden were kind enough to be here, we are privileged to be able to hear from them on maybe some lessons that can be learned from the remarkable story of Sweden. And not only becoming an advanced country that has very high human development index, but also in promoting economic development in a way that is equitable and that promotes human welfare. Now, because of time constraints, I will no longer make my remarks that I plan to make. But before we begin this debate this afternoon, I have the honor to introduce to you, first of all, the president of Addis Ababa University, Mr. Admasu Segai, who will make some welcome remarks. Mr. President, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Your Excellency, Mr. Addis Borg, Swedish Minister of Finance, Your Excellency, Ms. Gunilla Carlsson, Swedish Minister of International Cooperation, Your Excellency Neway, Gebreab, Economic Advisor to the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Your Excellency Jens Odlander, Ambassador of Sweden in Ethiopia, dear ministers, ambassadors, and invited guests, dear excellencies and distinguished guests, on behalf of all the staff of Addis Ababa University and on my own behalf, I extend my very warm welcome to you all. It is a great honor to Addis Ababa University to organize a high-level panel discussion titled Sustainable Growth and Development in Africa, the roles and responsibilities of the actors, including the private sector and the donor community in partnership with the Embassy of Sweden in Addis Ababa. We are greatly exhorted with the presence of the two ministers from Sweden, the economic advisor to the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, and the high-level experts in spite of their tight schedule and not many other preoccupations. I would like also to extend our warm welcome to other honorable panelists, Dr. Eleni Gabremedhin, Eleni Exchange Africa, founder of the Ethiopian Commodity Exchange, Ms. Jessica Colaco, manager of iHub Kenya, Dr. Tassew, Weldehanna, Dean of College of Business and Economics, and the moderator for today's panel, Dr. Emmanuel Nnadozie, Director of Microeconomic Policy at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Dear Excellencies and participants, Ethiopia is currently engaged in a highly ambitious effort to realign its higher education system in more direct support of its national strategy for economic growth and poverty reduction. Its achievements over the past 10 years have been impressive. The reforms have targeted all levels, the overall system, the institutions, and the academic programs. At the system level, 32 public universities now stand in place of the previous 2 university system. An aggressive expansion policy designed to raise the country's insignificant tertiary enrollment ratio to more respectable level is producing results. Total tertiary enrollment in public universities surged from about 33,000 in 2000 to 350,000 in 2013, about tenfold in just 13 years. The annual enrollment growth rate was possibly the highest in the world during this period. My own university, being the oldest and largest in Ethiopia, is repositioning itself to be able to contribute its share in the development endeavor in the country. Since the establishment of the university in 1950, the university has grown from strength to strength, both in terms of field of studies and student and staff numbers. With the vision to be a preeminent African research university, the university has made the confident decision to place graduate program at the heart of its strategic plan. Currently, it is running 65 undergraduate and 225 graduate programs, of which 69 are PhD in 16 campuses. It has a population of about 50,000 students and 2,000 academic and over 4,000 support staff. Dear Excellencies and invited guests, such great achievements could not have been possible without the commitment Addis Ababa University received from its government and the determination of its faculty to the demanding, ambitious plans. Further, these efforts are facilitated by the long-standing collaborative synergies for research and teaching Addis Ababa University has developed with SIDA-SAREC. Dear Excellencies and invited guests, Ethiopia is Sweden's oldest beneficiary country. Cooperation began in 1954 when civil engineers were trained in preparation for rural school building program. Research and capacity building support by SIDA-SAREC dates back to 1979 when support for master's programs in science at Addis Ababa University commenced. Since then, SIDA-SAREC has been supporting on different kinds of programs such as project-tied PhD training, sandwich model of collaborative training, and at present, block grant model of funding to direct more of the resources toward this development-oriented, thematic, and multidisciplinary research, and to improve the linkage between research and graduate programs. Dear Excellencies, there is no question that SIDA's long-standing support has had a major impact at the level of individual and institutional capacity building. Hundreds of master's and PhD students have been benefited directly either through involvement in sandwich program or through inclusion in a project with student-linked support. Institutional impact has been more pronounced at the postgraduate teaching. Among several successful projects, one may cite the Ethiopian Flora project, which is when it was completed after almost 30 years, had resulted in 10 volumes of the flora of Ethiopia and Eritrea, making Ethiopia one of the few countries in Africa with a complete and published flora. The Butajira Rural Health Program, another outstanding example of an enduring research collaboration, was started with SAREC through SAREC project. There is a widespread consensus within Addis Ababa and SIDA's initial funding of the MSc program and later followed by different modes of PhD support have been the most significant influence on changing Addis Ababa University from predominantly teaching university to an emerging research university. More indirectly, but no less important, the impact of master's and doctoral support has clearly influenced the research philosophy at Addis Ababa University. Without SIDA's support from 1997 onwards, it is doubtful that the master's and doctoral program at Addis Ababa University would have got off the ground at that stage. I take this opportunity to express my appreciation for the support from the Swedish government through SIDA SAREC. At this juncture, I would like to confidently confirm to you that this support and collaboration has also created profound and long-standing relations between Ethiopian and Swedish people. Addis Ababa University has embarked with a path toward this stimulating epistemic discussion on various issues that are of importance to Ethiopia and Africa, the outcomes of which could inform policymakers and practitioners alike. Today's panel is a good beginning in this endeavor with a relevant and timely theme. We have made it a point that our students are engaged in these debates as they are the future of this country. They constitute more than half of today's participants, and I am sure that they will find the panel discussion illuminating and will engage themselves in this debate through the questions and answer session at the end. Once again, I warmly welcome the entire panelists and invited guests to this panel discussion and wish you all successful discussion. Thank you very much.
I have the honor as well to introduce Ambassador Jens Odlander, the Ambassador of Sweden, Addis Ababa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you very much for those nice words about the cooperation between SIDA, which means that's our development agency, and the minister responsible for that is here with us also. So it was very nice and kind words of you. I think today is very wonderful for me. I'm at the end of my term. I'm not leaving exactly now, but it's fantastic for me to have two very prominent ministers coming at the same time and being able to address a crowd like this, where focus is, of course, on the students. And I'm very happy that so many came. It's the end of the academic year, as I understand, and it's also a bit of an Easter feeling still lingering. So I'm very, very happy. What we try to do, simply speaking, is to get the panel together where there are some different perspectives. We have the moderator actually emanating from Nigeria. We have a participant from Kenya in the private sector. We have Ethiopians here, of course, and government representatives and the Swedish perspective. So we wanted to lift it a little bit to a more Pan-African discussion, although we are in a very Ethiopian place and this house of learning. And it's so wonderful for me to be here and to be just saying that welcome everybody who came. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, now let's get down to business. His Excellency, Mr. Anders Borg, Minister of Finance of Sweden. Next is a young lady who is very aspiring business entrepreneur, Jessica Carlsson. She's the manager of IHOP Kenya. Next is Eleni Gabremedhin, because she was running the Ethiopian commodity board here, and to Neway Gebreab, who is the principal advisor, economic advisor of the Prime Minister, and another minister from the Swedish Republic, Madam Gunilla, Carlsson, if I remember very well. And then the last but not the least is we have Dr. Tassew Weldehanna, who is is a professor of economics and the Dean of the College of Business and Economics at Addis Ababa University. Ladies and gentlemen, here is your distinguished panel. Please welcome them. Now, Honorable Minister Borg, as Minister of Finance, you oversee many portfolios, things that make the economy work. I'm sure, based upon your experience, that you do see what is happening in Africa and have some thoughts about it. So what are your thoughts, please?
I keep spending most of my time discussing the European crisis, whether it's Cyprus, Greece, Spain, Italy. The picture is very similar. Over-indebted countries with too weak competitiveness that need to fix their domestic economy. And then you tend to go to the World Bank and to the IMF meetings. And there we also have the discussions on Africa. And all of a sudden the perspective changes. From a very pessimistic and dark mood about Europe's prospect, we are entering into a continent where there is great prospects and a lot of hope for the future. I think we're all aware of the basic facts. Africa has been growing with 5% of the last 15 years. This year we have 15 countries that are growing faster than 6%. There are actually 7 African countries that are growing faster than China this year. I saw that the city banks, who are not known to be very optimistic or philanthropic people, are saying that if the growth prospects are continuing, by 2030, Africa's share of the world economy will be equal to Latin America. If that growth then continues to 2050, the share from Africa will be equal to that of the United States or Western Europe. So, to my mind, there is a African renaissance that is ongoing. And I think it is happening for very solid reasons. There has been a political shift in Africa towards much more of structural reform, openness, but also more of elections and more of accountability and better governance. And clearly macroeconomic stability has been a part of that. The debt level in Africa is on average 30% and the deficits are around 2%. So maybe Africa could qualify for the euro area. But also I think we should be aware of the fact that we are seeing a great demographic dividend here. The labor force is growing. We will have 1.5 billion people in some 20 years. Urbanization is happening, which is obviously very good for growth. Telecommunication technologies is connecting the continent, and we're also seeing other changes. So for us to come here, it's about learning what are the opportunities and what can Sweden and other European countries contribute with. And I see 3 major areas where we can be a part of this. Foreign direct investments are a growth engine. Particularly if we're going to see a structural transformation of the African economies towards light manufacturing, a growing textile industry, a growing leather industry where actually the value added is increasing and also creating a lot of jobs. There, a country like Sweden, which have some of the major retail players in the global, on the global arena, can be a part of long-term investments, investment that will create jobs and opportunities for 20, 30 years ahead of us. There's also a tremendous need for infrastructure investments in Africa. We all know about the World Bank's calculations of $95 billion US for the years to come. There is a clear role also there for Europe. We have pension funds and investors that have a long-term perspective that could be a part of transformatorial investments in Africa. And also in agriculture sector, where there is a huge need to lift productivity. In Ethiopia, there is a great potential with almost, as I understand, 20 million hectares of arable land that could be brought under the plow, where productivity could be increased by more fertilizers and more green revolution and new harvests. All of these areas, it's possible for a country like Sweden and for Western Europe to be a part of a development. But one should also realize that there is a lot of issues left that has to be dealt with, and we have to have a good and open dialogue about issues like openness, governance, accountability, rule of law, because all of the long-term investors in Sweden and all the long-term investors in Europe will have to face their employees, their clients, and their owners, and being able to justify that they are making long-term investments in Africa. And that will have to be about building a democratic culture with openness and respect to freedom of press and so forth. So I see a great opportunity. We need to have a dialogue, we need to learn, and we need to educate our own population because the pictures in the media about Africa is often illustrated by Kalashnikovs and starvation. And a country like Ethiopia that is now growing close to 10% and has been growing for 10 years, which has been able to also bring reductions of poverty, increased agriculture production, and building a growth that is also inclusive, obviously have a lot to offer for not only Sweden, but for the whole of Europe. So I think more of integration, also dealing with difficult issues there we might not be seeing the same on all of them. But a dialogue, a constructive dialogue, and a long-term investments opportunity for us could, I think, together, to me, Africa is the next China, and it's next to Europe. So in all of this pessimism about Europe, Africa is offering an opportunity with its young population and with its enormous potential for future growth.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Ethiopia is a country on the move, and we use it as an example of what can be achieved with visionary leadership. Many other countries are on the move as well. But we need to create 10 million jobs every year to address employment, especially youth unemployment in Africa. The growth level is quite significant and quite respectable, but maybe many countries need to grow at double-digit figures. Now, where you stand, how do you see Africa sustaining this growth, making sure it is inclusive, that we provide jobs for all our young people, and deal with all the social issues that we have to deal with?
Thank you. My brief is that we will have a 5 minutes interval, and I would like to cover the topics you have indicated. The last 2 decades have been very positive for the continent at large. In the 1990s, the big thing was the thrust towards democracy. The process of democratization has started throughout the continent in the 90s, and I think by now we can fairly say that this path will endure. There are obviously pockets where there are problems. This is in the nature of things, but the general thrust is very encouraging. On the economic front, since the year 2000 in particular, there has been very fast growth. There again, we have observed a very interesting phenomena, not only driven by high commodity prices globally, but also by the capacity of African countries to seize this opportunity and grow their exports and grow their economies at a very commendable rate. So far the story. What are the challenges? The challenges on the economic front, to start with, are quite serious, because we need an economic growth rate that will enable per capita income to double minimum every 10 years. Minimum every 10 years. If possible, every 8 years. That at least is what we are trying to do in Ethiopia, and I cannot wish any less for the rest of the continent. Now, growth, again, might be possible, but it is not the entire story. We can grow our economy at 10% or more, but there still remains a challenge in 2 areas. One is inequality. If you have growth and it is not shared by the majority of the population, it is politically not sustainable, and economically it's not a good path of development either. So there is that problem of unequal growth. Then there is the second component. The second component is that African economies must be able to technologically upgrade their economies. Able to diversify, get away from agriculture and primary products production towards manufacturing. Broadly, transformation. These two are big challenges, and in terms of our achievement regarding reduction of inequalities, regarding structural transformation, I am afraid the story is not as bright as we could say vis-à-vis growth rate. And I hope we'll be able to discuss this when you open the session. Within the economy, and going back to the growth theme, growth is for African economies, international trade is an important vehicle for growth. And this means one has to be competitive, globally competitive, be able to produce commodities and not simply, in our case, coffee, sesame seed, or in the case of other African countries, copper or beet oil, whatever, but manufactured goods. Manufactured goods at competitive price and at qualities that are globally required. Let me touch a little bit more on manufactured goods. Although I presented it in relation to trade, and since you raised the question of employment, the biggest employment has to be within the manufacturing sector. If we want people to move from agriculture to industry, then it is obvious that the manufacturing sector should grow. It may not be the most important source of employment in the non-agricultural sector, because we know in most economies it is services. But for services to be able to increase at any rate, you need the motor of growth. And the motor of growth in this instance will have to be manufacturing. Let me stop there. If you allow me, I could have continued, but let me stop there, and then I hope we will pick up different themes as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nnadozie, as usual, very insightful. Honorable Minister Carlsson, you have heard Nnadozie. I think he put his finger on the button by mentioning the issue of manufacturing being at the center. You, as Honorable Minister of Development Cooperation, of course, represent a country that I think has stepped up when it comes to providing, official development assistance to Africa. And I think Sweden is one of the, good examples that one can always give, has always provided support. Now, but if you look very well, there's a whole lot of progress that has been made in many areas. But the discourse now is about how do you, add value to Africa's commodities? How do you, increase trade? And how do you ensure that the growth that we have will be able to, provide jobs for young people? So as a Minister of Development Cooperation, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts about the relationship between Sweden and Africa and how this can assist Africa in achieving its goal, but also in the same way become beneficial to Sweden as well. So Minister, please, your thoughts on that.
Thank you, and I think it's very timely to start to think about from Sweden's point of view here. So honoring our commitments to live up to what we have promised, to deliver on official development assistance, but also trying to figure out now, after 50 years of experience, how to do it in the future, and what is the role of aid in this new world with globalization, with this not only economic transformation, but also social transformation. I'm serving at a high-level panel on the post-2015 Millennium Development Goals, and we have learned a lot, I think, from the current MDGs. But we can't do the same exercise as we did in year 2000. It's a totally new world now. And to make aid relevant, it has to live with its time and to realize that it's not the only source of finance. On the contrary, it has to make itself relevant and come out of isolation to see that the tools that we are providing are really helping not only growth and trade to have and to spur economic development, but also to see that that can be inclusive and sustainable, both in a social, economic, and environmental aspect, and to make it right. And there, I think, still there are gaps to fill with development assistance, and still there are humanitarian catastrophes that has to be addressed, but also that aid could have a catalytic role and to help to fill gaps, but also to transfer some kind of knowledge and values. That's at least how we are working now, and that's why we focus more on Africa. We try to address the needs of the poor people and to really see that we can measure results in their lives and to stop looking at them as poor people. I used to talk about the Africans as the aspirational people of the world that would be part of the globalization, and to give